Chapter 31 City Attack 1. The sun rose high, casting golden rays of light upon Moonshadow City. The sound of marching boots reverberated through the streets as the city's inhabitants gathered along the roads, curious about the cause of such a commotion. What they saw was an army of 1,000 men, clad in domineering crimson-red armor, marching in perfect unison. Their steps were synchronized with military precision. Flags bearing the emblem of their lord, Maximus, fluttered in the gentle breeze. The citizens, observing their striking march, felt their blood boil. Their eyes were filled with admiration, and some parents even had their children cling to them, telling them that one day they would become great soldiers too. The parents laughed with chests held high, knowing that such a formidable force would act as their shield against any impending threat. The soldiers' faces remained expressionless, but deep inside, they felt pride, showcasing the result of their rigorous training. The clanking of armor and the steady beat of war drums echoed, creating a symphony of strength and unity. As the army disappeared into the distance, the overwhelming display of power brought a sense of unity and reassurance, igniting a profound pride within the inhabitants. On the observation deck above Stonebrick City, 2 guards stood vigilantly, their eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of possible attacks. As they looked over, they engaged in a conversation. "I heard the nobles called for a gathering," one guard whispered, leaning against the rough stone wall. "Does it mean the war will resume?" The other guard sighed, his gaze fixed on the distant field. "It's hard to say. There was a ceasefire due to the deaths of a large number of nobles, and there is a potential threat from the neighboring kingdom. But after a period of consolidation, it seems like the tension is rising again." Nodding solemnly, the first guard sighed, "The war left us with severe food shortages, and I've heard of many people dying from hunger. It's truly an unfortunate predicament." The second guard's expression mirrored the weight of their conversation. "I know, right? Fortunately, Etheria Market was built as it somewhat alleviates the situation." Curiosity flickered in the first guard's eyes. "Etheria Market? I've heard about it, but what exactly is it?" The second guard's voice carried a hint of mystery. "I don't know much, but I've heard that it's from another place, and they've opened the market here." "Really? That sounds mysterious. What would they want in this poor place?" "Perhaps they're searching for something," the first guard replied. "Indeed, looking at their supplies, it seems like they are not short of money that they need to expand the market here," the second guard explained. As they were talking, their eyes suddenly caught sight of a dust cloud in the distance. Their conversation abruptly stopped as they looked at each other's faces. "Look, over there," one guard exclaimed, pointing towards the approaching army. "We have an enemy approaching." Without hesitation, they both sprang into action. One guard swiftly reached for the signal flare, a small cylindrical tube containing a colored smoke canister. He ignited it, sending a plume of bright red smoke into the air. The signal flare arced above the city walls, leaving a trail of red smoke, serving as a reminder of an enemy invasion. The commanding officer, a seasoned Tier 2 Great Knight, approached the guards who had ignited the signal flare. His expression was stern. Taking a look at the guards' anxious faces. "What happened?" His voice carried a tinge of annoyance. One guard stepped forward, his voice shaky. "Sir, we spotted an approaching enemy." The commanding officer's brow furrowed as he listened. He retrieved a small device resembling a telescope, swiftly extending it to get a closer look at the situation. Peering through the device, he observed the approaching army. After a while, a wry smile appeared on his lips. "There are only about 300 of them. This is nothing more than a mere bandit attack. There was no need for the needless panic," he remarked with a smug tone. His comment stung the guards, who exchanged glances, their faces showing a hint of embarrassment. "We apologize, sir. We acted instinctively with the city's safety in mind," one guard reasoned. The commanding officer dismissed their apology with a wave of his hand. "It's okay. What we need to do is deal with it swiftly. Prepare the troops for a skirmish. This should be an easy victory for us." He turned away from the guards, his confidence seeming to calm them as they began to prepare for the city's defense. Lieutenant General Lith halted their march, his gaze fixed on Stonebrick City ahead. The red smoke dancing in the air caught his attention as if welcoming their arrival. With a calm expression, he turned to his troops. "It seems they have already spotted us," he murmured. "Form the array formation." Lith ordered, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Take your positions, lock shields, and hold the line." The soldiers responded immediately as if they had performed this maneuver countless times before. They moved into their designated positions, aligning their shields to create an impenetrable barrier. The Titan array formation took shape, satisfying Lith. The Knight's shields became infused with earth magic, forming an impervious barrier capable of withstanding powerful assaults from the front. With this formation, there were no enemies that could harm them. Phalanx of the Titan, Tier 1. This formation arranges the Knights tightly, creating an impenetrable formation reminiscent of ancient Titans flexing their muscles. The Knight's shields are infused with earth magic, forming an impervious barrier. Price, 1,500 gold. Remember, soldiers, we fight not only for victory but for the unity of our kingdom, Lith declared, projecting an inspiring aura. Stay focused, trust in your training, and let our array formation be the shield that protects us. With each soldier locked in their position, the array formation stood as a formidable sight. The troops awaited further orders as they slowly marched toward the city wall. As the city guards watched the approaching enemy force, a wave of fear washed over them, causing their hands to tremble and their hearts to race. The aura emanating from the oncoming troops felt like an overwhelming shield ready to crush them. The Tier 2 Knight commander in charge of the battle couldn't help but feel a shiver down his spine. Although he was not considered very strong in this continent, his strength granted him superiority over most opponents. These soldiers, they felt like a giant monster, a one guard whispered. How is this possible? Are they all knights? His voice filled with disbelief. The commanding officer swallowed hard, his eyes locked on the advancing enemy. Although their number is small but combined with their strength, made him question his initial assumptions. Their formation appeared to be tightly coordinated, like hungry wolves deprived of prey for weeks. Though he outranked them by a tier, he still couldn't shake the feeling that he and his guards were nothing more than ants facing an elephant. The realization sent a chill through his veins. Prepare yourselves, the commanding officer called out, his voice cracking, betraying his lack of confidence. Hold your ground and fight with all your might. Those who retreat will be killed without mercy. The city guards exchanged nervous glances, their faces pale with fear. They were acutely aware of the danger they were about to face, but they had been given a death order that they could not refuse. They unleashed a barrage of arrows upon the advancing enemy, hoping to inflict some damage or at least delay them. However, as the arrows met the enemy, it seemed as if they encountered an invisible barrier, leaving the enemy unscathed. Their futile efforts only served to deepen their sense of helplessness. Lieutenant General Lith, leading the charge from the front, paid no attention to the raining arrows. They were like mere toothpicks, bouncing harmlessly off an impervious shield. His eyes locked onto the closed gates of the city as he commanded the army in formation. Charge! Lith's voice thundered. The soldiers, upon hearing this order, charged with all their might. Bang! With a deafening sound, the gate flew while still attached the wall. The combined strength of over 300 knights was so powerful that it blasted the gate, flying. Seeing this, the guards felt their hearts sink. Some were already looking for opportunities to retreat. However, upon seeing their commanding officer, they held their ground. Little did they know that their so-called commander was already planning his own escape, intending to use them as a delay tactic. Chapter 32 City Attack 2. The citizens of Stonebrick City, plagued by a constant sense of danger, carried on with their daily routines as best they could. Their faces were filled with weariness and hunger that gnawed at their bodies. Chatting with their neighbors, they attempted to find something to do to forget the hunger that tortured them. As the city guards gathered near the wall, nervousness spread through the air. The citizens were curious as to why the guards were assembling near the wall, sensing that something was wrong. Whispers of an impending attack circulated, further adding to their unease. However, they still curiously looked on, their hunger-consumed bodies leaving them with little energy to spare for a feeling of panic. To them, the possibility of facing death by a sword seemed more bearable than succumbing to the slow agony of starvation. Bang! Suddenly, a deafening sound reverberated through the streets. The city gates crashed open, jolting the citizens from their numbed state. Panic surged through their veins like a sudden shock as their survival instincts kicked in. In a frenzy, people scattered, seeking shelter wherever they could find it. Doors were slammed shut, windows were hastily barred, and the once bustling streets turned eerily deserted within moments. Within the confines of their homes, people held their breaths as their hearts continued to pound. They listened intently to the chaotic sounds of battle, the clash of steel, and the cries of battle, growing more nervous with each passing moment. As the battle raged on, the array formation displayed its overwhelming strength, crushing the enemy without much resistance. Fortunately, they had been instructed to show mercy and only render the enemy unconscious, as they would be reintegrated into the army later on. With their immense power and impenetrable barrier, subduing them is relatively easy. The commanding officer, sensing the hopelessness of the situation, felt a surge of panic. He realized that they were being toyed by the enemy, and he then quickly looked for an opportunity to escape. He commanded the city guards to attack more aggressively, preparing to hold the enemy a little longer. Meanwhile, Lieutenant General Lith saw through the commanding officer's intentions and swiftly flanked him with his 4 trusted knights, each possessing similar strength as a peak Tier 1 official knight. They encircled the commanding officer and swiftly formed their specialized formation, granting them increased perception and agility, different from the regular army formation. Engaging in a fierce clash, Lith's sword clashed with the enemy, nearly launching him into the air. Fortunately, the specialized formation provided a cushioning ability, quickly dissipating the kinetic energy. With their precise and calculated attacks, it seemed as though they had eyes in the back of their heads. The commanding officer could barely evade and parry their strikes, leaving him increasingly injured as the battle ensued. As the battle raged on, desperation filled the commanding officer's heart. He found himself heavily wounded, slowing his movements, while his opponents remained as agile as cats, seamlessly rotating to attack him from all angles. He wondered how a mere 5 official knights could overpower him, a seasoned great knight, with such minimal effort. Finally, with a swift swing of his sword, Lieutenant General Lith severed the head of the commanding officer. As the head slowly fell in the air, the battlefield suddenly fell silent, apparently all their attention was on them in this brief battle. "Soldiers of Stonebrick City," Lith declared, his voice carrying authority. "Your commanding officer has fallen. Surrender now, and your lives shall be spared." His words echoed throughout the silent battlefield, reaching the ears of the crumbling city guards. The death of their leader further shattered their spirits, leaving them in despair that dwindled their morale. Lith swept his gaze across the dispirited guards, fully aware that surrender was their only viable option. They were no match for his troops, especially considering that they had no casualties thus far while inflicting heavy losses upon the enemy. "Drop your weapons and surrender," Lith reiterated. "Those who surrender now will be granted mercy and treated fairly." As the silence lingered, the city guards, acknowledging the futility of their situation, began to slowly lower their weapons, with hands trembling with fear. The sound of weapons clattering as they hit the ground became a tangible symbol of their surrender. True to his word, Lith instructed his troops to secure the surrendered guards, maintaining order amidst the chaos that had just unfolded. The city guards felt a mixture of relief and gratitude as they realized they had survived the onslaught. When they surrendered, there was still a glimmer of hope for a future, but continuing to fight will be a dead end filled with despair. As the dust settled and the echoes of battle faded away, silence filled the air. The once hidden citizens of Stonebrick City cautiously emerged from their homes, their eyes filled with uncertainty. Before stood a group of disciplined soldiers, their crimson-red armor shining in the fading sunlight. The citizens exchanged bewildered glances, unable to fully comprehend the turn of events. What would happen to them now? Fear and curiosity mingled in their hearts as they pondered the intentions of these soldiers. One man, overcome by a mixture of fear and curiosity, mustered the courage to approach the soldier wearing the crimson-red armor. "What do you want?" His voice trembled, as he dared to question such a powerful figure. The soldier, taken aback by the question, remembered the orders given by Lieutenant General Lith to survey the city and ensure no hidden enemies were remaining. With a stoic expression, he replied, "We are from Moonshadow City. Our Lord has witnessed the suffering of the people and seeks to bring peace to this kingdom." The poor man was shocked and excited by the soldier's response. "Is it true what they say? Is Moonshadow City the rumored fairyland with unlimited food?" Hope glimmered in his eyes. Even those who had been hiding and eavesdropping felt their excitement rise as they heard this revelation. Moonshadow City was said to be ruled by a benevolent lord, and the citizens had long dreamed of finding refuge there. However, their lord had imposed strict bans and curfews, preventing them from leaving their city. The soldier in the crimson-red armor noticed their expressions and offered a caring smile. "We are currently distributing food in the center of the city. Now, if you'll excuse me, I still have tasks to attend to," he said. With a wave of his hand, the poor man bid the soldier farewell and hurried back to his house, making preparations to go to the center of the city. The others who had been hiding also emerged from their hiding spots. Their footsteps quickened as they rushed to join the gathering at the center of the city, fearful that there might not be enough food if they arrived late. The poor man cautiously traveled to the location the soldier had said. his eyes fixed on the many people gathering for food, just like him. With fear and apprehension gripping him, he continued to walk, desperately hoping that it was real and they were truly giving out food. Upon arriving at the scene, he was shocked to see the long line of people waiting to receive their portion, which turned out to be a pot of porridge. His stomach rumbled with hunger, and the sweet aroma of the porridge filled his senses. Joining the line, he observed the orderly queue, with people from all over the city standing patiently, their eyes filled with excitement and anticipation. The line led to a makeshift distribution area where soldiers worked diligently and efficiently. Finally, it was his turn. The poor man inched forward, his gaze locked onto the food before him. Although it was just porridge, for someone who hadn't eaten for days, it felt like a feast fit for a god. A soldier handed him a bowl of porridge with a smile and said, "Here you are." Tears slowly welled up in his eyes. It had been so long since he had last tasted a proper meal. Unable to contain his gratitude, he whispered, "Can I have another one after I finish this?" "Yes, of course. You can come back for as much as you want," the soldier replied, understanding the man's plight. Unable to wait any longer, he stepped out of the line and took his first bite, savoring the flavors that danced upon his tongue. It was a taste that he would cherish and remember for the rest of his life. Chapter 33 Enemy Alert. General Smith and General Johnson sat across from each other, surrounded by maps, reports, and scrolls detailing the aftermath of the war. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows across their faces as they meticulously read through the documents. As they perused the reports, a sigh of relief escaped both generals, pleased with the news they had just read. They had successfully captured the 3 cities without much difficulty. General Smith raised an eyebrow as he studied statistics regarding the damage inflicted upon the captured cities, the number of surrendered troops, and the overall cost of the raid. Carefully examining the reports, they made note of the gains they had received. It became apparent that the most valuable acquisition was the population, which numbered around 100,000 more than the population of Moonshadow City itself. As expected of our well-trained soldiers, there were no casualties, General Smith remarked. They also managed to minimize loss of life on the enemy side, which is a significant achievement for us. General Johnson nodded in agreement. Yes, our soldiers certainly know how to execute tasks perfectly. With only 1,000 soldiers at our disposal, recruiting civilians at this stage is not feasible, so we will have to consider incorporating the enemy's army. They continued their discussion, strategizing on how to allocate and manage resources to reinforce and stabilize the cities they had conquered. They took careful note of the citizens' needs for food, resources, and medicine, intending to report these requirements to their lord, Maximus. Recognizing that the lord prioritized population over wealth, they understood the importance of winning people's trust. They planned to cater to their needs and gradually integrate them into Maximus' kingdom once all the lands were unified. General Johnson leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the candle. We have taken the first step towards unification. I hope that liberating the people in the kingdom can be achieved as smoothly and efficiently as this. Indeed, but the real challenge lies after the noble reacts to the situation. We encountered little resistance this time due to their forces being scattered, General Smith replied, his tone serious. Locking eyes with each other, they understood each other's meaning. They continued their work, crafting follow-up plans and strategies. In the Grand Council chamber of Watchtower City, the Noble Alliance convening a meeting. Lord Harrington, the leader of the alliance, addressed the council members. Esteemed nobles, the recent truce has allowed us to consolidate our power, but we must acknowledge that the 3 dukes are also doing the same. The time has come for us to discuss our follow-up plan. This land is too small for 2 rulers, Lord Harrington continued. Excitement and greed filled the faces of the council members. They were already envisioning a prosperous future for themselves. Lady Isabella, the council's diplomat, raised her hand to speak. Lord Harrington, although we may outnumber the 3 dukes' troops, they still possess a considerable amount of resources, and their armies are more disciplined and stronger than ours. It would be unwise to underestimate their abilities and continue the war. You are right, Isabella. We are indeed no match for the dukes, and it would be imprudent to persist with our attacks. However, I have invested huge amount resources to hire a Tier 4 Sky Knight to directly eliminate the dukes, Lord Harrington revealed his plan. But Harrington, once we have killed the 3 dukes, are you certain that the neighboring kingdoms will not make further moves? Inquired Lord Roland, a friend of Lord Harrington. I understand your concern, Roland. That's why I have reached out to some nobles in the neighboring kingdoms to gauge their views. This continent must not be ruled by a single individual, which is why I plan to form a noble council composed of nobles from all over the continent. These nobles have promised not to interfere with our affairs, Lord Harrington assured them. The room buzzed with murmurs as the nobles recognized the feasibility of the plan. They realized they were all in the same boat now, and the idea of forming a noble council seemed increasingly beneficial, especially for those who joined early. As their discussion continued, they explored various ideas and strategies, engaging in thorough debates to refine the plan of forming the noble council after the three dukes were eliminated. Suddenly, the door was forcefully slammed open, and a guard rushed in, gasping for breath. The abrupt interruption annoyed some of the nobles, who exchanged glances. "What's the matter?" Lord Harrington calmly asked. "My lord, urgent news. Stonebrick City, Pinecrest City, and Willowdale City have been attacked," the guard reported, unaware of the annoyance in the room as he handed over a parchment. The expressions of the people in the room shifted from annoyance to shock as they received the news. Lord Harrington's face turned red with anger and humiliation as he examined the contents of the parchment. According to this report, it was Count Maximus who led the attack on the three cities we recently regained control of, Lord Harrington coldly explained. This revelation angered the surrounding nobles. It was one thing if the responsible party was the dukes, but to have a mere count encroach on their territory felt not only humiliating but also an act of defiance. "I believe this is not a simple matter," Lady Isabella interjected. "To have the audacity to attack us now, he must possess the means to do so. I've also heard of several unsuccessful assassination attempts on him due to the rumors that he possesses a treasure that can reverse the land nature and make it fertile," she further explained. "Indeed, I have invited him several times, hoping to acquire his methods, but all my efforts have failed. I even sent a small contingent of elite soldiers, but they vanished without a trace. I had put this matter aside due to the growing conflict with the dukes, but now that he has attacked us, we can no longer turn a blind eye." Lord Harrington spoke with a serious tone. Lord Roland, however, was filled with fury. How dare a mere count overstep his boundaries? We were already generous in inviting him, yet he has the audacity to refuse and launch an attack against us. "Who gave him the courage to do so?" he exclaimed. The surrounding nobles agreed, their fists clenched with a mix of excitement and anger. Now, I understand your anger, but let us not forget the bigger picture. We must not let our anger underestimate this man. I plan to deploy our idle army to retake the lost cities and ensure that such acts do not happen again," Lord Harrington assured them, attempting to calm the room. The nobles nodded in agreement, refocusing their attention on their earlier discussions about managing and distributing the benefits once the noble council was formed. The room was renewed with energy as they eagerly voiced their desires. Little did they know that the news of the attack had been intentionally spread by Maximus to divert their attention, unaware that the army responsible for the attack consisted solely of official knights. The three dukes, Charles, Thomas, and Darwin, found themselves amidst a grand dance party, surrounded by beautiful women. The room was adorned with shimmering chandeliers as the women elegantly waltzed, their attire barely concealing their body. Amidst the festivities, they discussed the recent attack on a city within the territory of the Noble Alliance. Initially, they had assumed it to be an attack from a neighboring kingdom. However, upon reading the report, they were amused to discover that the perpetrator was a mere count from within their own ranks. Well, it seems that our friends on the other side cannot even control their own people." "How amusing!" Charles laughed heartily, his belly shaking with mirth. "Ha ha ha. It appears our noble brethren are not satisfied with their fair share of the benefits and have resorted to taking what they want by force." Thomas, a suave and witty man, chuckled as he raised a glass of wine. Darwin joined in their laughter, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Indeed, Charles. The allure of power seems to have clouded their reason, leading them to fight amongst themselves." The three continued to revel in their amusement, enjoying the dance of the women around them. They chose not to delve further into the topic, unaware that the count they were discussing was not part of the so-called Noble Alliance. Chapter 34 Connecting the Cities. Maximus sat in his study, engrossed in reading the reports detailing the outcomes of the recent raids. Once he finished perusing the reports, he retrieved a quill and parchment, carefully composing a letter. With each stroke of the quill, he conveyed his intention to continue the attacks without pause, aiming to attack while the Noble Alliance still didn't take him seriously. The ink dried swiftly, sealing his orders. Aware that the enemy did not take him seriously, he believed a swift and relentless assault was necessary to hasten his progress to unite Fury Kingdom. As for any potential counterattacks, he was not overly concerned. Possessing the strength of a Tier 3 nascent mage granted him invincibility in this continent. Even if faced with a Tier 4 Sky Knight or another Tier 3 nascent mage, he believes that he was far stronger than them. With advanced spells and a top-tier meditation formula, divine consciousness granted him a purer and greater quantity of mana. This is his reason and confidence to know that he could overpower those of the same rank. Once he finished writing the letter, he handed it to his loyal courier, accompanied by a firm nod, providing the final instructions to ensure its delivery. In the morning, Maximus held a meeting within his castle. Surrounded by his trusted officials, the atmosphere was imbued with seriousness as they discussed their next steps in the campaign. Our recent victories have granted us control over 3 cities. However, mere control makes them a burden to us. We must turn these lands into profitable assets sooner rather than later, he declared with authority. First and foremost, we need not overly concern ourselves with the safety of the cities, as that responsibility lies with the army. What I require from you is to stabilize the land and make them prosper, Maximus instructed. One of the officials presented a detailed map of the region, placing it on the table. My lord, if we intend to transform this land, we must establish a stable transportation network as our first priority. This will allow for the safe and efficient transfer of supplies. Yes, in addition, we can utilize the excess population to work in factories and cultivate the land. With the Lord's magical crystals, we can expand the agricultural areas in these cities, another official added. Very well. I expect these roads to be constructed swiftly, Maximus affirmed, expressing his approval to the officials. Subsequently, the meeting delved into more detailed discussions and planning. The officials rose from their seats, offering contributions and suggesting various plans of action. The meeting concluded on a positive note, with a sense of contentment. Kevin sat comfortably in his lavish carriage, his eyes fixed on the window as the bustling streets of Moonshadow City faded away. It had been a few years since he arrived in the city and began his spice business. Once a poor boy, he now enjoyed the luxuries of life, riding in a magnificent carriage. As the carriage traveled along the road, his attention was drawn to a construction site. It wouldn't have been unusual to see road construction on the outskirts of the city, as it had happened before. However, he was now several miles away from the city, and the construction work still continued, piquing his curiosity. Intrigued, he halted the carriage and stepped out, approaching the group of workers who toiled with sweat glistening on their foreheads. He politely inquired, "Excuse me, gentlemen. May I ask what is happening here? Why is there still road construction taking place so far from the city?" "Oh, it's you, Sir Kevin," one of the workers exclaimed, wiping his brow. "This road is being built to connect to the cities captured in the recent military campaign that took place a few days ago," he explained with a weary smile. "Captured cities?" Kevin repeated in surprise. "I was conducting business in those cities just a few days ago." "Did they have a conflict with the Lord?" he inquired further. No, sir," the worker solemnly denied. "The Lord has shown mercy and, witnessing the plight of the people, decided to incorporate them into his rule and provide them with the lives they deserve." Kevin's mind raced with thoughts about Lord Maximus' intentions. He began to suspect that the Lord was planning to unify the entire Fury Kingdom under his rule. "Thank you for the information. I shall turn back to the city to ensure that I don't interfere with Lord Maximus," he declared with a serious tone. He didn't want to risk his life continuing his business ventures now. The thought of being caught in the midst of a conflict between Lord Maximus' forces and the captured cities was too great of a risk. He valued life over money, knowing that money could be earned again, but life was irreplaceable. He climbed back into his carriage, instructing the driver to turn around and head back to Moonshadow City. His plans had been disrupted, but he prioritized the preservation of his life over financial gains. General Smith and General Johnson stood before the defeated soldiers of the 3 cities they had just conquered. The soldiers looked weary and uncertain, unsure of what fate awaited them. "Soldiers!" General Smith began his speech, his voice filled with sincerity. "We are not here to judge you based on your past allegiances. Today, we extend a genuine invitation to join us in our cause. We understand that we once fought on different sides, and you may fear that we will treat you as mere cannon fodder," General Johnson added. "Rest assured, we are here to offer you an opportunity and power the power of a knight which once brought you defeat," he said, pointing towards a group of soldiers who exuded a formidable presence. The group of soldiers emitted a palpable pressure, reminding the defeated soldiers of their own powerlessness during the battle. They exchanged glances, hope glimmering in their eyes as they yearned to possess such strength and regain their lost vigor. General Smith continued, his voice firm but compassionate. We recognize the skills and experience each of you possesses. Despite being overwhelmed, you showed unwavering courage on the battlefield. This is the very courage we need in our army. General Johnson nodded in agreement. We have witnessed firsthand the courage and resilience you possess. We will not treat you any differently. Instead, we will acknowledge your talents and place you in ranks that you deserve. As the generals spoke, one by one, the defeated soldiers' expressions transformed from weariness to excitement. They were eager to join on this cause and be incorporated into the army. General Smith smiled, raising his hand to signal the soldiers' attention. If you choose to join us, we will train together, fight together, and rebuild the land into prosperity. With Lord Maximus by our side, nothing will stand in our way. The defeated soldiers stood a little taller, a spark of determination igniting within them. This was their opportunity for redemption and, more importantly, an opportunity to become stronger. The thought of gaining the strength of an official knight filled their veins with newfound fervor. With resounding cheers, the defeated soldiers pledged their allegiance to Lord Maximus and wholeheartedly joined the army. General Smith and General Johnson welcomed them with open arms, recognizing their value and the importance of their contribution. In the days that followed, the defeated soldiers were swiftly integrated into the training camp. They trained side by side with their fellow soldiers, following instructions that taught them night meditation methods. Moreover, they witnessed the astonishing field of array, where their strength visibly grew day by day, evident to the naked eye. Chapter 35 Ambush in the Valley. While the integration of the defeated army was underway, General Smith and General Johnson gathered their officers and strategists in the war room, planning their next course of attack. We need to continue attacking while the Noble Alliance hasn't reacted much, General Smith declared. Yes, but this time we shouldn't divide the troops to be safe in case the nobles ambush us, General Johnson nodded and advised. They then discussed whom to attack and how to distribute the available troops while integrating the defeated soldiers. They also addressed the logistical needs for the upcoming operations. The strategists quickly studied the detailed map of the Fairy Kingdom, their minds racing to devise a strategy that would allow them to conquer the next city quickly and safely. Moments later, they identified various weak spots and devised a coordinated attack to maximize the value of their troop strength. As the officers and strategists dispersed to relay orders to their respective units, the defeated soldiers, who had recently joined the army, were energized for the next day of training. They quickly heard the news that the army was going to attack another city. They murmured to themselves, praying for the good luck of the unlucky city they were about to attack, jokingly referencing their own experiences of despair when facing such an abnormally strong army. The mobilized army attacked the next city according to plan, with speed and precision, conquering designated cities one after another. Their assault caught the enemy off guard, overwhelming them with the sudden and coordinated onslaught. City after city fell, coming under Maximus' control. In just 1 week, they captured 7 cities. The defeated soldiers were again integrated into the training. Maximus had plans for them after he united the entire Fairy Kingdom. In the grand meeting hall of Watchtower City, Lord Harrington, the leader of the Noble Alliance, fumed with anger upon hearing the news of Count Maximus' raid of 7 cities in just a week. They had been preparing to retake the last 3 cities, but now 7 more were added to their list. Lord Harrington knew that this could not continue. As he held a meeting, gathering the nobles, advisors, and generals, Harrington laid out his strategy. I've had enough of this, Maximus attacking our territory one after another. I will lead the attack this time. I want you to gather all of our available forces. We will set an ambush and crush him once and for all. The room buzzed with noble cheers, and the generals volunteered themselves to lead an army. Lady Isabella chimed in, Lord Harrington, we only have about 10,000 men available as they are needed to defend against possible attacks from the dukes and protect our territory.
That's fine.
We'll just bring some strong knights.
That should be enough.
And don't forget Bartolom, a tier 4 Sky Knight. Although we hired him to deal with the dukes, I will bring him in case something happens beyond our control, Lord Harrington said with confidence. A hushed silence fell over the room as the nobles and generals absorbed the plans. Although they would have to pay additional money and resources to the hired knight, Bartolom, it would ensure the defeat of that scum Maximus for daring to attack their territory. With the plan in place, Lord Harrington, the generals, and the nobles dispersed, each taking on their assigned tasks to gather the available troops and prepare for the ambush. Driven by the feeling of vengeance and fueled by the desire to bring down Maximus, they quickly went about their jobs. Little did they know that their plan had been quickly discovered by an insignificant officer in the corner, a spy from the phantom group in their midst, who swiftly reported it to Maximus. In the dimly lit study of Moonshadow Castle, Maximus sat at his desk, poring over a letter delivered to him by the phantom group. With a light tug, the letter's seal broke, revealing its contents written on parchment. The letter contained vital information intercepted by the phantom group, the detailed ambush plan set by the Noble Alliance, to be led by Lord Harrington. Maximus's eyes narrowed upon reading the news. He knew that the Noble Alliance would fight with all their strength in this battle. However, what concerned him was not their strength, but rather the fact that his army alone was no match for them. While Maximus believed his soldiers could crush an ordinary army, he was certain that the enemy would also have strong knights who could break through his forces. Yet, knowing their ambush plan in advance presented him with an opportunity. Regardless of the strength of the army brought by the Noble Alliance, Maximus was confident he could defeat them. Standing up from his seat, he made plans to secretly join his army and participate in the upcoming battle. It would also give him a chance to test his newfound spells, which he had been experimenting with recently. In the depths of the valley, an eerie silence settled over the rugged terrain as 10,000 soldiers of the Noble Alliance, led by Lord Harrington, positioned themselves quietly, their eyes focused on the narrow passage below. They awaited the enemy who would unknowingly walk into their trap. Lord Harrington stood tall under the gleaming moonlight, with the formidable Tier 4 Sky Knight Bartolom by his side, exuding an aura of confidence. Bartolom was Harrington's trump card, boosting his confidence against any unknown troops Maximus might have. As the moon hung high in the sky, a rustle in the distance signaled the arrival of the enemy army. The soldiers lying in ambush held their breath, ready to attack at any moment. Lord Harrington tightened his grip around his sword, listening to the enemy drawing nearer, confident in his impending victory. Just as they were becoming excited about their successful ambush, a sudden silence gripped their hearts as a chill ran down their spines. Puzzled, Lord Harrington looked ahead and saw torches illuminating the sky as the opposing troops took their stance as if waiting for them.
They've noticed us,
Harrington yelled through gritted teeth. He is indeed no ordinary man to have seen this coming from so far away, he muttered, calming himself as he realized that Maximus must have learned of their plans through a spy, as they were not particularly secretive. Fear tingled among the soldiers as the element of surprise had been lost. However, seeing Lord Harrington's composure, they calmed themselves as well. Prepare to fight, Lord Harrington yelled as he raised his sword. With calculated precision, Harrington commanded his soldiers to encircle the outnumbered enemy. The soldiers of the Noble Alliance moved swiftly, positioning themselves strategically to cut off any chance of escape. They formed a wall, closing in on the 1,000-man army. There is no escape for you. Blame this on your ambitious lord, Maximus, for daring to attack our noble territory. Harrington's voice resounded with triumph and arrogance. Surrender now, and perhaps we will grant you mercy. Not taking Lord Harrington's words seriously, the 1,000-man army released their aura, revealing their strength. They were shocked to feel such a palpable aura, sending shivers down their spines. Harrington was momentarily taken aback but quickly regained his composure. He already knew about such a force, as he had investigated how Maximus conquered those cities so quickly. At the time, he had been shocked and unaware of how Maximus had such a huge amount of resources. That was why he had hoped they would surrender, as such a formidable army would be helpful for his conquest in the future. What he didn't know was that the 1,000-man army he admired and wished to possess had mastered a unique and powerful formation, giving them fearsome abilities. Additionally, 2 Tier 3 Earth Knight generals had yet to make their moves. Maximus, a Tier 3 nascent mage, concealed himself in the darkness, waiting for the opportunity to strike. The once calm valley became the backdrop for the impending clash between Maximus and Harrington, both fueled by their ambitions and desires to shape the destiny of the kingdom.